Now with this SnareSaturday video, it's time to do something a little bit different and talk about the history of a specific snare drum. And what better drum to start out with than the Ludwig Acrolite, originally designed to be a more affordable student model option, which eventually gained a cult following with professional drummers. Yo, what's going on everybody? Nick Costa here, and in this SnareSaturday video, I'm going to be talking about the Ludwig Acrolite, a drum that has over 50 years of evolution. In this video, I'll be talking about the origins of the Ludwig Acrolite, the unique sound that it made, the variations of the drum throughout the eras, which leads us to the Acrolites of today, which is great for us drummers because there are more options now than ever before. Now, before we dive into this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, as well as the bell icon. That way you're notified of any additional content that I upload to the channel. Let's get started with the origins of the Ludwig Acrolite. Now, when searching for when the Acrolite was introduced, you're going to see a few different years. Some folks say 1962, Ludwig's website says 1963, and some people even say 1964. However, Ludwig did release a flyer in 1962 introducing the Acrolite. And based off of the flyer that was posted to vintagedrumguide.com, the flyer states, in an effort to continually design new products made out of new material, Ludwig engineers were able to introduce a lightweight alloy, which they were calling the Acrolite, aka aluminum. The introduction continues to state that the Acrolite was outfitted with 8 double-sided lugs and triple flange hoops made out of the same Acrolite material, aka aluminum. Finally, the flyer states how the Acrolite was designed based off of the 400 professional model snare drum, which we all know today as the Ludwig Supraphonic, the LM400 5x14 snare drum. Now, the first generation Acrolite that was introduced in 62, or like some say 63, was a welded aluminum shell that had an orange peel finish. Not like the orange peel finish that you see in the Acrolites that were released in the 70s. However, it wasn't a smooth finish like some of those 60s Acrolites that a lot of people go after. Now, as I've mentioned before in earlier SnareSaturday videos, Ludwig always designed drums and then would come out with a more affordable option and would label it a student model. And that's exactly what they did with the Acrolite. They took a Supraphonic, which is a chrome over aluminum snare drum. They did not chrome plate it. And instead of having those 10 imperial lugs, it has 8 double-sided bow tie lugs. By doing this, Ludwig was able to lower the production cost of the drum to make it more affordable for everybody else. Now, although this drum was a more affordable student model drum, it quickly gained a cult following because of its unique sound. The Acrolite gained popularity with pro drummers who were looking for a dry, cracking snare drum tone. However, this was something that the Acrolite could do and did really well. Now, a couple interesting things to keep in mind. Number one, snare drums of this era always had an internal dampener, which allowed drummers to turn it on and off to let the drum ring out if the dampener was off, or control those overtones by engaging that dampener and making it a tad bit drier. Now, Now, the really interesting thing is that usually snare drums that have more lugs are going to have a more dry, direct sound. For some reason with the Acrolite, it's the opposite. And aluminum is known for having a brighter sound characteristic than other metals. So when you combine those two things together, somehow it created a dry sound that you could also tune up really high to get that cracking snare drum sound that you might be looking for. And because this was labeled a student model, they were really affordable drums, but they had this professional quality sound to them. And because of this, there was a huge impact in the drumming industry because of the Acrolite. Now let's go ahead and talk about the evolution of the Acrolite. That first generation Acrolite, which a lot of people identify as the prototype models, was a welded aluminum shell that had an orange peel-like finish to it. After that first prototype of the welded shell and the orange peel finish, Ludwig changed the design of the shell and made it a smooth aluminum seamless shell. In the 1963-1964 Ludwig catalog is identifying for the first time that this shell was a seamless shell. This is also the time that the drum was no longer coming with aluminum hoops. And this particular design of a seamless aluminum shell with 8 double-sided bow tie lugs and triple flange hoops on the top and the bottom is what that shell and drum was from the mid-60s up until the 70s. So into the 70s, you have a smooth aluminum shell. Mid-70s or so, that's when you're starting to get that orange peel finish. You can see some of these drums into the 80s as well. And then when you get into the 90s, that is when Ludwig introduced the Black Galaxy Acrolite, which was an aluminum shell with a black powder-coated finish. Now, throughout all of these eras, besides the shell changing, the badges were changing as well. Originally outfitted with a Ludwig Keystone badge in the 60s, transitioning into the 70s is when we start to see the blue and olive badge. And this badge started out with having points on either end of it. As we start getting into the 80s, however, those badges are starting to get cut off and are rounded over. This is why when you are looking at vintage Ludwig drums, you will see some people are calling them blue and olive badges or rounded blue olive badges. That just means that they were made at a later date. Then, of course, when Ludwig introduced the Black Galaxy Acrolite in the 90s into the early 2000s, they were a black and white badge. Now, a present-day Ludwig Acrolite has that same badge that you see on other present-day Ludwig snare drums. Now, those Acrolites from the 60s, 70s, 80s, even the 90s into the 2000s, all of those drums were aluminum with 8 bow tie lugs and triple flange hoops. Now, Ludwig did discontinue that Acrolite, the Black Galaxy model, in the early 2000s, but the Acrolite was reintroduced. However, they are now offered with 10 lugs rather than 8. And instead of only being a 5x14 model, they are offered as both a 5x14 and a 6.5x14. And that 6.5x14 up until the present day was one of those holy grail things that people would look for, because if you found a vintage 6.5x14 Ludwig Acrolite, most likely it was made exclusively for the New York public school system. But the modern day Ludwig Acrolite, once again, is still a seamless aluminum shell. The drum is still outfitted with double-sided bow tie lugs, but now has 10 instead of 8, and are outfitted with 2.3mm triple flange hoops. And besides being offered in an aluminum shell, Ludwig has recently introduced those Acrolite drums in copper, brass, and bronze. And because of these new iterations of the Acrolite, you now have unique sounds that you could never get before out of this particular model. Simply because aluminum, you get that brighter timbre and characteristic out of the drum. Copper, you're going to get the darkest possible tone. Then you have a brass model, which gives you the warmth of brass. And then finally bronze, which gives you more of those boosted mids. Now, what Ludwig is calling the Acrolite, or the aluminum version, is a 1.6mm seamless shell. However, the acro copper, acro brass, and acro bronze are all 1mm seamless shells. So that brings up a question. Will the Acrolite still be relevant in the future? Personally, I think so, especially with Ludwig releasing new models made up of different metal alloys. But also, if you've ever tried to find a vintage Acrolite, you used to be able to find them for under $100, and now you're lucky if you find one for $225. And that's simply because of the demand of everybody looking to find one. The Acrolite has a lasting legacy because it was a student model, more affordable drum that gave you this professional, unique sound. Dryness that you got with that high cracking snare drum sound was something that you couldn't get with any other drum. And being that so many people wrote this drum off, it just became a well-kept secret for the longest time. But in the drumming industry, as big as it seems, it's actually pretty small, and people start to talk, word spreads pretty quickly. Now, I would love to get your feedback and what you thought of this video, so make sure that you leave it in the comment section below, letting me know. And if you want to see more videos like this, let me know what drums you would like me to go over. Also, I would love to know what you think of the Ludwig Acrolite, so feel free to leave that in the comment section below as well. And if you have an Acrolite, or maybe 2 or 3, I'd love to know which models that you have. Now, if you have any other additional questions on the Ludwig Acrolite or anything else, feel free to leave that in the comment section as well, and I will try my best to answer them. If you'd like to check out some earlier Snare Saturday videos where I showcase Acrolites from the 60s, the 70s, and the Black Galaxy Acrolite, I've put links to all of those videos in the description below. And if you would like to get a modern day Acrolite for yourself, I've put affiliate links in the description below as well. Finally, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure that you give it a thumbs up. That way it makes it a little bit easier for others to find it. It's also a quick and free way to support the channel. If you'd like other ways to support the channel, I have a few affiliate links in the description below, or you could give this video a super thanks, even consider becoming a member of the channel, where you would receive exclusive perks. And that is it. Thank you so much for checking out this video on the Ludwig Acrolite, a drum that has over 50 years of evolution. And until next time, see you later.